Tonight on the Daily Debrief, R. Kelly's crisis manager creates a crisis of his own. Plus, is the death of a child accident or murder? A pathologist tries to tie together a case involving accusations of abuse, choking, and death.
That's a description of a seizure.
And did a European webcam girl drive a Florida defendant to murder his family? The Debrief recaps the day in court. It's Monday, July 22nd. Good evening, everybody. Glad you're with us tonight. The man who works as singer R. Kelly's crisis manager said he would absolutely not leave his own daughter alone with anyone facing the accusations his boss is facing. CBS News interviewer Gail King tried to ask the manager specifically whether he would leave his daughter alone with R. Kelly, but the manager said his blanket statement that he wouldn't leave his daughter with anyone facing the accusations of pedophilia, including R. Kelly, would stand. The manager also said he watched young women coming and going from R. Kelly's home with shopping bags. They were not restrained, not locked up, and did not raise his suspicions. The manager said Kelly is isolated these days and is living off of income from music royalties.
You have a 20-something-year-old daughter. Would you allow her to be alone with
Absolutely not.
With R. Kelly?
I wouldn't leave my daughter with anybody that's accused of pedophilia. Period.
So you would not?
I would not leave my daughter with anyone that's accused of being a pedophile. I would not.
Here early tonight is Judge Ashley Wilcott along with attorneys Jessica Ramirez and Michael Bryant. So, Judge Wilcott, did this crisis manager create rather than mitigate a crisis there?
Yeah, I think he did, Aaron. Here's what frustrates me about what he had to say. A, he did avoid the question because I don't think he believes that his boss is a pedophile. And B, he went further to say statements like, look, they had shopping bags. I didn't think anything was wrong. It didn't raise my suspicions. Well, that is a really naive way of thinking that the only way it's a pedophile is if they've, bound someone and it's obvious. That's not pedophiles. They groom.
I was thinking the same exact thing here. So Michael Bryant, R. Kelly's attorneys, probably fuming about this interview with CBS, his own interview with CBS there, what was it, a couple of months ago? What about this one?
Well, they're not happy. This guy is supposed to be putting out fires, not starting them. And I could tell he was being totally honest because his reaction was so quick and so intense. Nobody's going to say that he just made a mistake. It was honest. It was real. Jessica Ramirez, one of the questions I had, Ashley Wilcott took the words out of my mouth here. We think alike, Judge Wilcott. Apparently, I say that's a good thing. Okay, but Jessica, these comments, like I wouldn't let anybody around him, was that aimed at the parents of the people that are coming and going with the bags, the people who claim that they say that they're living with him voluntarily and everything?
I think so. I think that's what they've been trying to do all along as well, is to blame the parents, not R. Kelly, and also to blame the women. They're coming in and out with shopping bags. They have things. They're shopping outside and coming in. There's no issues. They're not being restrained, and that's why it's so it's a big thing when women come and say that they've been sexually assaulted, because it's the kind of stuff that they have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, as Judge Wilcott said, and I agree, hey, look, there may have been things going on. It's just he didn't see them. And look, how does character evidence play into someone's chance for innocence, Judge Wilcott?
Well, in terms of character evidence, it makes a difference if they have a good character. But listen, a lot of pedophiles have a good character. They're stand-up members of the community, and they've groomed their victims. So it really doesn't mean anything in terms of charges of being a pedophile.
We are going to continue to follow this case. The panel will be back in just a moment. We are also following the upcoming trial of a Florida man accused of killing his family after he stole their money and sent it to an online webcam girlfriend in Bulgaria. 29-year-old Grant Amato is accused of taking some $200,000 from his mother, Margaret, his father, Chad, and his brother, Cody. Prosecutors say the father gave the defendant a list of rules such as get a job, stop spending every night online, and go get therapy. Rather than comply, the defendant is accused of murdering them all and then trying to take money from their life insurance policies. Opening statements in this case are expected tomorrow. Is it a question of accident or murder? That's the big question in a Georgia trial of a couple accused of killing their 2-year-old foster child. Joseph and Jennifer Rosenbaum face a mix of murder and other charges related to the death of Layla Marie Daniel. Authorities say the little girl died from blunt force trauma to the abdomen, a cut pancreas, and other abuse. The defendants say the girl died accidentally by choking on a piece of chicken and that she was further injured during CPR. A pathologist today testified about the victim's many injuries, which she said were not normal, and tried to tie together the various versions of the victim's death.
With what you observed from Ms. Rosenbaum's interview with police, did what she described appear to be the signs of a child choking?
What I observed and what she described, I would say would not be what I expect or commonly see when someone has an event where their airway is blocked by a foreign object. The ideal of choking may be a word that is confused with actually airway obstruction by a foreign body. So what I observed is a description of the child having choking was the word used, but in the description she describes that the child's head kind of moved back, her arms were moving, her legs were moving, and her whole body was kind of moving such that it was a little bit distracting to her. And that's a description of actually a seizure. I mean, we know that when we're talking about arms moving, legs moving, the whole body shaking, the word seizure was not used by her, but that's a description of a seizure.
Okay, so was it a seizure, and what caused the seizure? Could it have been caused by abuse? The pathologist thinks it was, and she continued with this.
The whole scenario and events that I have reviewed are a description of a child that is going into shock, as opposed to as a child that has a foreign object such as food. In this particular case, the suggestion was that she had choked on chicken. The description is not consistent with that at all.
Is the description that she gave consistent with the internal injuries that you observed at autopsy?
Yes, absolutely. So what I observed and what I've previously testified to is that the autopsy, at the time of autopsy, I identified significant blunt impact trauma to the abdomen. There was a liver laceration. There was a laceration of the pancreas. The laceration of the pancreas actually separated it into two pieces, and there was internal bleeding. And so, given those findings that I found at autopsy, the description of everything that was happening is quite consistent with the fact that she had this trauma, and then these are the symptoms of the trauma.
The pathologist also attempted to refute defense claims that the victim's injuries could have been the result of the activities of an average child.
There's a lot of injuries on her head, bruises and abrasions.
Now, to be fair, you stated that you observed an extensive amount of bruising over her entire body, correct?
Yes.
Could some of the bruises that you observed have come from child's play or accident?
Some of the bruises were in areas where it's expected to find bruises in a child of this age. So yes, I found things of that nature, but there are other locations where you never typically see children getting bruised in regular activities that a 2-year-old would do. So she had bruises over areas of her pubic area. She had very extensive bruises on the entirety of the back. Those are not locations that we expect and commonly encounter when children of this age just have activities of normal living.
And remember, the victim's sister described the victim's death in a recorded interview. Here is some of it, which experts eventually discussed today.
What happened? Were you there when Layla died?
Well, yeah, I was in the house, but I wasn't by her when she died.
Okay, tell me about that. Tell me, where were you in the house? What were you doing?
I was just playing and I was watching TV.
Where were you watching TV? In your room, in the living room, outside, where?
We didn't have a TV outside.
I don't know. I have to ask. So, see, you're a smart girl. So where were you watching TV then?
I was watching TV.
So when you were upstairs watching TV, where was Layla?
She was downstairs eating, and then she choked on her food.
She choked on her food?
Yeah.
Okay, do you remember what Layla was eating? Did you eat that day too?
Yeah, and I didn't choke, but Layla did because Miss Jennifer, like,
It's okay.
Miss Jennifer pushed the food down with a knife.
She pushed the food down with the knife? Did you see that? How do you know she pushed it down with the knife? Okay.
Did you see the news about her?
Yeah, well, we don't want you to think about the news. All we want you to tell us is what you personally saw or what you personally heard.
That was the end of last week, and that raises a lot of questions. Here is how an expert analyzed the testimony from the victim's sister.
When Millie was further questioned, it wasn't that she saw it, it was told to her. When a caregiver or someone of authority is in a child's life, tells that child something, such as choked on a piece of chicken, it's something that she heard, she didn't necessarily visualize, and that's what she stuck to. That was her understanding.
And based on your experience, what, if anything, is significant to you about the fact that Millie, immediately after Layla's death, told both the ER nurse and the forensic interviewer that Layla died before the ambulance got there?
She wasn't told, it was what she experienced. Again, you have to look at the vernacular, what words a child uses to describe what it was that they've experienced. It's that context.
Is it at all surprising to you that Millie was preoccupied by death after Layla died?
Not at all.
Is it at all surprising to you that Millie struggled with issues of trust?
Absolutely not. The individuals that were put into Millie's life were there to protect and care for her as caregivers. It is those people in her life and any other individual's life, that's who you're to trust. And when that trust is broken, that unfortunately, in my experience as a therapist, is a struggle that perhaps Millie may face throughout her life.
Let's break this down with our panel tonight. Judge Ashley Wilcott, witness after witness in this case, has testified that the injuries are not normal for either the victim or her sister. So what do you make of this new theory that Layla could have been having a seizure brought on by abuse and was not necessarily choking, but that choking is just the way the defendants perceived it?
Well, I still think it means that this child was abused, and as a result of that abuse, this child died. So whether it was a seizure and they thought it was choking and that was caused by the abuse, or whether it was an outright beating of the child, my words, nobody else's, Aaron. Either way, it was caused by the abuse to this child.
Yeah, that seems to be the way that all the dots are being connected in this case right now. So Jessica Ramirez, we've been back and forth about, okay, where's the chicken? Why is there not evidence of chicken in the throat? If chicken didn't come out of the throat, we've been focused on the chicken. Well, now we suddenly have this other explanation. How does it affect the defense?
Again, they have an uphill battle with this case. Every witness, every expert that's been on has been affecting their case. It's going to be very difficult. There's what's not there says a lot as well. Again, today they were able to prove some things. They were able to get the bruising is not an exact science, that we don't know when any fractures were really happened. But again, it still shows that this child died because of abuse, whether it was through blunt force trauma or she was abused.
Michael Bryant, the interview with the sister, we listened to it again there, and then we had more of the context, the explanation. So should we trust what the surviving sister says? Should we half trust it? What did you take away from it?
You know, we have the two versions. We have her 7-year-old on the stand testimony, which was so good, and then this as the 4-year-old who experienced what she did at the time. I think even if you discount the 4-year-old version and you just think about what the 7-year-old told us on the stand, it is powerful, it is out of the mouths of babes. It is hard to disbelieve. Now she's 7 years old, and she is, I mean, Millie is the survivor. She's the lucky one. This could be easily a case about 2 kids that were killed by their foster parents, allegedly.
Oh, certainly. I mean, and that's the fear that's going through a lot of minds here. Jessica, I'll throw this question your way, though. We heard in that interview with the sister, well, wait a minute, did you see this on the news? Is that where she got a lot of her information from? And if so, that's scary from the standpoint of the defense.
It could be if it was just this one witness testifying as to the abuse, but we have so many. And again, I think that the expert explained it beautifully. Children talk about their experiences, not so much facts. So I think they were able to explain it, and really there's so many witnesses here that we don't need the child's testimony.
Exactly. Well, still ahead tonight here on The Debrief, we're going to remain with this case with new testimony about whether the victim and her sister could have been injured some other way, perhaps at gymnastics, which is what at least one of the defendants said. We're going to analyze that when we come back right here on The Debrief. Welcome back. Before the break, we heard testimony in the Rosenbaum case from the victim's sister and from an expert. Now, let's listen to a school counselor who worked with the victim's sister for another opinion on this case.
Jennifer told Millie to go upstairs and to stay there. She said that Layla was not talking. They called 911. They knew she was killed, were her exact words. She didn't go downstairs. She knew something was happening. And she also said that Jennifer had spanked Layla. She was not tearful about it. She was strong, stoic almost, for her age, with no emotion. It was just a matter of fact, this is what happened.
The state's tactic has been to try to deconstruct every possible defense brought up by the 2 defendants, including whether the victim, Layla, and her sister, Millie, could have received their injuries doing gymnastics.
Do anything else?
I asked them if they had any incident reports regarding Layla or Millie ever being hurt, and they did not have any. And I asked about attendance, and she gave me the attendance records, which I added in to my record.
Did you review that attendance record?
Yes, I did.
Did you find that Layla Daniel attended gym tech at all?
No.
Okay, so the state's trying to track down leads and they're running into brick walls. That's what that testimony was, and we heard similar testimony from other gymnastics people in this case before today. An emergency room nurse had the sad job, though, of notifying everyone that the victim had died. She testified that the defendants were behaving oddly in the ER.
Donald Cleveland was with me to do the death notification in this case. So at that point, we proceeded to tell them that Layla had died.
Now, prior to that, did they ask you any questions?
No. When in my experience, when you typically walk into a case like that, the family member they immediately want to know what happened. They want to see the child. They want to know what's going on. Like I said, when I first went in, they were kind of quiet and didn't really ask a lot of questions at that point in time. Joseph didn't really show a whole lot of emotion. He just kind of kept sitting there. I remember Jennifer was sitting there and she started rubbing her eyes. There wasn't any tears coming out at that point in time. She just kept saying, I can't cry anymore, I can't cry anymore.
Did this interaction seem out of the ordinary to you?
Yes.
And why is that?
In my experience, when you notify family members or anybody involved with a child, especially family members are typically, they're beside themselves, they're sobbing, they're crying, they can be angry at times, like they're just distraught. So that wasn't a typical reaction that I've seen.
To be fair, you would acknowledge that people do react differently, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did either of them say anything else to you while you were in the room?
I was kind of quiet at first, and then I asked if they had any questions, and then Jennifer proceeded to say that the child had been choking on chicken, and she tried to do the Heimlich maneuver.
Okay, let's go back to our panel one last time tonight. Judge Ashley Wilcott in Georgia. Question here. The state seems to be presenting an awful lot of evidence as to the wife in this case, Jennifer Rosenbaum. What about Joseph Rosenbaum? We haven't heard a lot of testimony about him. Does the state have enough to convict both of them or not?
Well, I think they do, but I think it's two different types of charges. So remember, the state's position is Jennifer was there, and we know this by their own admissions and statements previous to trial, that he was not there at the time this child died. And so necessarily, he probably didn't partake in what happened right at that time. However, he's been involved in the other instances, and I think that they're still going to present evidence about his involvement in this.
Yeah, so what we need to do tomorrow is be very thorough. Judge Wilcott, thank you for the lesson. I needed the reminder. Again, two different sets of charges here. We need to walk through those because at this point in the trial, we're seeing exactly why that is. So, Michael Bryant here, thorough enough prosecution here. What do you think? Yes, no? I hear witness after witness after witness saying almost everything possible. I hear the state chasing down almost every single lead, trying to give the defendants the benefit of the doubt, and it's just not there yet, in my opinion.
The thing is, the defense today moved for a directed verdict only as to Joseph. Very odd. Not to both defendants, assuming they both be denied and that'd be grounds for appeal. Only to Joseph. We know that whatever he may have done is more a sin of omission, that his crimes were not correcting the problems that Jennifer has been alleged to have caused, the injuries she's alleged to have caused, the death she's alleged to have caused. So, yeah, there's plenty there to hold him. Remember, this is just a question as to whether the jury can find anything in the evidence presented to find him liable under the charges against him.
And Jessica Ramirez, that's sort of strange what Michael's talking about here. I mean, is it not a malpractice issue to only move for a directed verdict as to one of your clients? But then we're back to the question of why is this attorney representing both of them at once? How did we even get to that point?
That's the first thing I thought of today when I saw that she moved for a directed verdict for just one of the defendants. I was scared for her because, yeah, absolutely. I mean, basically, she's putting it out there. There's an issue. One of my defendants, I think, didn't do this, and the other one did. And so much so that I'm asking for a directed verdict. And it absolutely is a big medical malpractice.
You know, hey, Judge Wilcott, you're in Georgia. How did we get to this point where we have one attorney representing both clients? Because now we're seeing why that might be an issue.
Yeah, I don't know, Aaron. I don't know how it got to this point because, frankly, I see that it is an issue. However, it's up to that attorney to determine whether or not they have a conflict, as you well know, and it's their burden alone to say they do or don't. I guess in this case, the attorney doesn't think they do. I think they do.
You know, and you also have privilege issues rather wrapped up in this with a husband and wife. Maybe they wanted to be represented together to prevent the possibility of one trying to testify against the other and then getting into the whole tangled mess of privilege issues, which oftentimes in cases like this, the law can override. We'll leave that thought for another day, though. We're out of time here on The Debrief. Thanks to the panel. Thanks to those of you joining us. Live coverage resumes tomorrow at 9. The Debrief back at 5. Have a good night.